More than 26 years after a woman from Manhattan vanished on Valentine's Day, genetic genealogy helps identify her.
I'm here with our fellow task force members to announce the identity of what has formerly been known as Fire Island Jane Doe.
The Fire Island Jane Doe is Karen Vergata, but questions remain as to whether Vergata's death is related to the murders of 4 other women, known as the Gilgo Four. Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Angenette Levy. For years, all law enforcement had to go on was a sketch, but now with the help of genetic genealogy, the Fire Island Jane Doe has a name.
We were able to identify Fire Island Jane Doe as Karen Vergata, who was 34 years old.
Karen Vergata disappeared on Valentine's Day in 1996. More than 2 months later, in April, legs and feet were found on Fire Island. Authren Labs, which assisted with the case, says the remains were in a garbage bag, and the toes had red nail polish from a recent pedicure. 15 years later, the woman's skull was found along Ocean Parkway on Nassau County's Gilgo Beach.
That skull was found following the discovery of the remains of Jessica Taylor, and the skull was found on the same day as the remains of what is commonly come to be referred to as Peaches was found on Jones Beach. Thereafter, in July of 2011, the Suffolk County Crime Lab linked the 2 sets of remains via DNA analysis. And by that I mean the legs that were found in the vicinity of Davis Park Street in Manhattan, and was believed to be working as an escort at the time of her disappearance. There was no missing persons complaint filed.
Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney went on to explain how Vergata was ultimately identified.
In August of 2022, approximately 6 months after we formed this Gilgo task force, a DNA profile suitable for genealogical comparison was developed from the remains of Karen Vergata. In September of 2022, the FBI was able via a genetic genealogy review to identify Ms. Vergata presumptively as Fire Island Jane Doe. Thereafter, in October of 2022, using a buccal swab from a relative of Karen Vergata, we were able to definitively identify her.
Fire Island and Gilgo Beach aren't far apart, and both are close to Gilgo Beach, where a line of remains were found in 2010 and 2011. All of the locations are about 20 minutes away from Massapequa Park. Rex Heuermann lived in Massapequa Park before his arrest last month for the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He is also the prime suspect in the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Heuermann has pleaded not guilty, and his lawyer said this week he maintains his innocence.
We're not going to try the case in the press. I doubt that any one of you for a moment have even contemplated the possibility that they have the wrong guy. There's no plea deal. He said from the moment I met him that I did not do this. So we're prepared to go forward. We will defend this case in a court of law, and we will go to trial in this case.
Surprisingly, the DA did not take questions about Karen Vergata or whether he believes Vergata's death is connected to the Gilgo Four.
It's important to note that there are no charges at this time. Ms. Vergata's disappearance was in 1996, which is 27 years ago. We are going to continue to work this particular case as we did the Gilgo 4 investigation. We're going to have no comment on what, if any, suspects we developed at this time. This is a confidential investigation, so I'm not going to be taking any questions.
That statement raises the question about whether the task force believes someone else is responsible for Karen Vergata's death. Vergata was dismembered. Her torso and hands were never located, and the remains were found in 2 locations. It should be noted, vehicles are only allowed on certain parts of Fire Island, such as the lighthouse, but civilians cannot drive the length of the island. Ferries provide transportation back and forth to Fire Island. Meanwhile, Rex Heuermann remains in the Suffolk County Jail, where he's being held without bail. He will be back in court next month. For Law and Crime, I'm Angenette Levy.